Hello, and welcome to Space at the Table. How you all doing? It's Wednesday evening. It's quite a nice evening, and look at all these beautiful faces surrounding me today. My name is Chris. I use he, him, and apparently I am in the wrong place. I put everybody in the right place except for me. I am a professional streamer, as you can see.
As always, a finely tuned machine.
Absolutely. It's not a some other hero stream if there's at least one tiny technical issue. My name is Chris. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the absolute honour of co-hosting this wonderful dive into some TTRPG goodness with some brilliant people. With me is Wayne. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Wayne. I am an art director and brand coach and co-host of this lovely show on the Some of the Heroes channel. So welcome to Space at the Table, our open discussion program where we have guests to talk about all sorts of exciting and fun things to do with TTRPGs, creativity and diversity.
Amazing. And with us today are not one, but two special guests. We're really, really lucky. We would like to introduce you to first, if you would like to introduce yourselves, please.
Hello, my name is Matt. You might also know me as Ursidice. My pronouns are they and he. I am a role-playing game designer, amongst other things, but I'm definitely here with my hat of role-playing game designer today, and hopefully getting to talk about the Kickstarter we have live. Sorry, I'm going to start plugging immediately. It's called Meet You Die in a Dungeon, and I'm working on that with Jean at the moment.
Amazing. And last but certainly, definitely not least, Jean.
Hi everyone, so I'm Jean. I'm a graphic designer, layout artist, and occasional TTRPG creator when I find the time and inspiration to do so. And yeah, I'm here mostly as a graphic designer because I work on You Meet in a Tavern, and You Die in a Dungeon with Matt.
Amazing. I think you probably just to dive straight in and just say a huge congratulations for not only reaching your target on Kickstarter, but absolutely smashing it. Well done, you guys. It's very well deserved.
The exciting thing is that I opened up the Kickstarter just before we went live, and it's gone up since then.
Oh, wait! Don't get me into the refreshing Kickstarter cycle. When I looked earlier today, I think we were a little bit over 150% funded, which is amazing.
Nice.
And
So
when we get to 200% funded, if we get to 200% funded, then we've got some exciting stretch goals, which maybe we'll get around to later when we've hyped up the game a bit more and it makes a bit more sense to talk about them.
Love to. That'd be awesome. Well, I guess probably best to just dive into it. So just start with some background sort of stuff, and then we shall talk about the amazing You Meet in a Tavern, You Die in a Dungeon. So I guess the first question to you both is just kind of a general sort of icebreaker sort of thing is, how did you guys get into TTRPGs?
I want to hear from Jean here.
So mine was a bit kind of a delayed introduction because I think I remember first playing video games and like Legend of Zelda kind of games, Baldur's Gate, Diablo, because my dad would play them and I would like, oh, that looks cool, like, can I try it? And I would, and it was awesome. And so kind of slowly learning what was a role-playing game. And then through films, TV shows, learning that there was something called tabletop role-playing game. It was like, oh my God, it sounds even better because I get to do all the stuff that I want. And never really got to it. And then at some point, my dad, out of the blue, was like, yeah, I used to play role-playing games. I probably still have them. And then he takes out these old books. So I'm not sure which edition it is, but it was like these old books with the red cover and like there were notes scribbled in it. And it's like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm going to beat the shit out of it and like play a lot. And I never read it because I was like 10 and I was like, this is too much stuff. I don't want to read that. I'm just going to look at it and be, okay, I like that for later when I'm smarter. Which I never, but I still have the books because it's just like a fun thing. I kept being interested in role-playing games through like mostly video games.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, 4 years, 4 or 5 years ago, when I was in uni, I was a friend who similarly was really into video role-playing games and tabletop, and he was like, "Hey, Jean, you want to try that?" And I was like, "For sure." And so we played a whole night. So we started at like 7 p.m. and ended at like 8 a.m. Of Dragon Age, and I had never played. And we just like
Oh,
created
yes.
characters and like went through the whole scenario, and it was like, "This is amazing!" It was just like this really kind of stereotypical thing where we like all like had junk food and we played all night and like had this dark light and we had shut the
Cool.
blinds to make sure like the light of day wouldn't bother us. And it was great. It was amazing. I loved it. And I kept playing on and off. And at some point I was like, wait, I want to try like playing myself. I bought Mutant Year Zero because the video game had been released recently. Um, really loved it. Yeah, and then the pandemic happened and I played a bit online. I was like, wait, I kind of want to do my own stuff. And so, yeah, things one thing led to another. So here I am now, helping people make their game.
That's amazing, and
That's so cool.
there's some familiar things I think that both Wayne and I can really attribute to. Like, my dad was a TTRPG before I was, and he got me into it. And Wayne's first one was indeed that same red box.
Yeah. I was like, everyone else is like, oh, my dad had that. I'm like, yeah, I had that. All right. I get it. I'm older. But I remember having the red box and being really intrigued by it. But it was the same thing. It was really daunting to kind of look at all the rules and everything. And also, I then realized you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
And that was, one of those things where I was like, okay, well, at some point I'll find people to play with me. And kind of never really got into it till much later. But also, Jean, I came to it through, Chris had played his whole life, really played TTRPGs. But I came in from the video game thing as well.
Mhm.
It was kind of getting to know what an actual RPG was there first and how that's different. And then getting into trying, let's play Dungeons and Dragons. And then it's just been very, very, very time-consuming hobby for the last few.
But it has built all this, which has been amazing.
That's true. And Matt?
I mean, it's good that it's time consuming for you though, because for most people it's like, oh, I'd love to be able to do it, but I don't have the time. So if it is consuming all your time, then that's the excellent other side of the coin.
That is true.
My start, I don't want to go to sort of super, because I think about this a lot, and I like the idea that everyone kind of starts role playing as kids. Just it's play,
Yeah.
and play is a very natural route into just experiencing, pretending to be someone else, empathizing, and all that kind of things, which is the heart of it. But then you're sort of told to drop that. In terms of that sort of more, I guess, structured one. I used to do a lot of wargaming when I was a kid. I started off with, Warhammer and painting all the toys, and I'd much rather paint one little person and then move them around on my own a bit, pretending they were a thing, or setting up like stories and stuff like that. So that was really my sort of introduction in that way. And then we had do you remember the TSR 1990 something board game Dungeons and Dragons? So it wasn't like,
yes.
with the big dragon on the front, like, got that. Again, didn't have anyone to play it with, so I just read that, and I was just sort of, I tried to work out how to play it solo, and it didn't quite work because obviously it's a lot of, here's a secret that the players don't know kind of thing. But yeah, muddled my way through that. It completely forgot about it until the age of about sort of 2021, when got invited to join a couple of friends and play a game of 4E. And my foray back into to role-playing games in that way was very much 4th edition D&D, which was a weird time to join, but kind of like Jean, we did these just enormous sessions. We'd do like 6, 7, 8 hour sessions and just sit down and play, and it was great. It captured me. And then sort of on and off since then, just digging further and further away from Wizards of the Coast sort of created stuff, and much more into just picking up stuff and going for weird and wonderful things and meeting more and more people and getting as much as I can out of it.
That's excellent. I love that though. And it's I think we play mostly Dungeons and Dragons at the moment, but when I was getting into it, we played all sorts of things like All Flesh Must Be Eaten, Little Horrors, lots of storytelling stuff from White Wolf. And it's just kind of nice to hear that other people are still kind of pushing away. And Dungeons and Dragons will always be the biggest. We can't do anything about that. It's a great game, but it is sometimes it's like you say TTRPG, and everyone's like, oh, D&D, like.
Yeah.
Yes, but no.
But I have to say, learning Dungeons and Dragons, because I've only really learned how to play it properly in the last 5 or 6 years. I know at the time Chris had mentioned other kind of things, when we were just getting into it, and he was like, "Well, let's try this system." I was like, "I can barely get my head around D&D. Can we just focus on this one?" And it's interesting because as you get more comfortable now, I'm quite excited to try different systems and different things, because now I actually think I have a better idea of how it works in general. But initially, I was like, too many numbers and things.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that's part of that sort of genericization that D&D has as being in the space, is that it's almost pushed as this should be your first role-playing game, and this should be what everyone starts with, and this is where it begins and when you go out from. But coming in, it'd be interesting to hear from Jean, coming in for, say, Mutant Year Zero and that kind of side of things. The things that you learn when you start playing D&D are very, very different to, say, what you learn if your first RPG is something completely different. And you almost have to unlearn a lot of those things when you go into something else and go, actually, this plays very differently, or the way we run this as scenes is actually much more collaborative, or you step out of that sort of dungeon master player sort of almost power imbalance, which is brought about by that more traditional sort of side of D&D, I guess. So I'm interested to see what your perspective is, Jean, on that sort of complexity, really.
Yeah, I think it really, I don't know if it defined my taste in how I play and how I run games, or if it was just I got lucky and found the right game for me. But I really, in Mutant Year Zero, basically you have a base that you can build and improve, and you go basically out on expeditions and come back with resources to improve it, which really guides you towards making a West Marches style of play, which was really fun because I had lots of friends who wanted to try the game. It was like, I'm sorry, but I can't have 20 people at the table. I think I did once a session with 7, and I hated it so much because it was in the summer and it was super sweaty. It was, God, I hate this so much. Thank God you're my friends, because but yeah, so it's definitely something. I've played D&D 5e, and that kind of thing where you have just a pool of players, and you can just say, okay, today we're starting at the base, we're going to explore that patch of land over there. You can't really have that in D&D. I mean, not that I've seen. And I think it really defines what you start with, what you expect from RPGs and what you think you can find. And I think it might be a bit too limiting to always recommend D&D, because it is one sort of experience, but maybe not everyone wants that kind of experience.
Yeah, it'd be lovely to get back into a place where you can just say, hey, well, what sort of game do you want to play? And then let's go and try something else. And I think we're not going to abandon D&D because it is simple for so many people to understand, and but there are so many other things that we want to play and we want to try as well. And actually, that kind of brings us very neatly into you meet in a tavern, you die in a dungeon, which of course is what we're really here to talk about today. So, so for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at all the information that we've been bouncing around for the last week or so, or aren't aware, could you guys just give us like a little sort of like your elevator pitch, as it were, that horrible term, but like a little rundown on what it is and what people can expect when they obviously leap onto the Kickstarter and purchase it.
Absolutely, Before we get going as well, I just want to say that there's a hardship tier on there as well, which is very much aimed at it's down at £6. It's going to be the cheapest you're ever going to be able to get that PDF, apart from community copies. So do back at that level, because even if you're not in need of a hardship tier and you just want to back it at a cheap level, just go and get it. Go and enjoy yourself.
I did notice that as soon as I had a look, and I have to say I love the idea of doing that, of giving people that option. I think that was just a great idea.
I just think it's a really important thing to be able to, because Kickstarters are very much about financial privilege. They're about, you get in early because you have the money to do it. And so why necessarily make that, especially when you're putting out a digital product alongside a physical one? Yeah. And that digital product, if someone backs at £1, it's them getting something great, and it doesn't in any way affect those physical things, which is where that money goes
Yeah.
with. So, yeah. Sorry, got into business.
I think that's wonderful.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, and happy to talk more about that campaign side of things a bit later. But yeah, You Meet in a Tavern, You Die in a Dungeon is a procedurally generated dungeon crawl with a sort of party game style feel and fighting fantasy inspired mechanics that takes you from a session zero style introduction where you create all your characters, work out how you know each other, make some awkward connections, and then you go into a dungeon and you die, and you die, and you die. And it is entirely designed around being able to jump in and out as you want, have your character die and come back as someone else, swap and be with a GM if you want to for a little bit. So yeah, it's very much this idea of taking that old school dungeon crawling trad game and making it just feel a bit more modern and a bit more open and less restrictive in that idea. Just like Jean was saying about that, if someone does turn up and they just want to play that day, or they turn up halfway through the session, they can still get involved and they can play, and it's no hardship on anyone.
That's really good. I love the fact that it kind of has this OSR feel, but like a sense of humour about it, which some of the other modern takes kind of feel like they lack a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
What do you mean by procedurally generated dungeoneering?
Yeah, so the whole game works essentially on. I would describe it's an engine is what I would describe it as. So it's I don't want to use that term AI, but it's you use a deck of cards to generate dungeon rooms, which let you sort of then have encounters and as you go through. All of it is sort of built around these. That session zero side is built around this. You get your characters sort of built here. The dungeon keeper's doing something else. They're setting up the next bit. They can roll and completely generate that at random, and it's all got prompts and things if you're just looking for that bit of help, if you're not quite in the headspace to think about it or dream it all up at that point, or you're welcome to dream it all up if you want. But it's just all these sets of tools that allow you to just make sure that you don't have to prepare anything before you get there. All you need is that deck of cards, the dice that you have, and just roll and sort of go out from there. So it's very much following some beats, which will get you a different story every time.
that sounds really cool. Sounds a lot of fun.
Sounds awesome. I do love the fact that you talked about, being able to create it. If you want to create it all yourself, you can. Otherwise, you have those prompts. Because it's one of the big things that we've talked about with gaming in general for me is I know when I started, there was so much people took for granted that I would be able to do and know that I actually found it really daunting. So I love games that have the flexibility for people who are brand new to still have the help they need to be able to take part. But people who actually are way more advanced get the freedom to be able to create more that they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
No, please. Yeah.
I was I am a big opponent of the what is a role-playing game section in a game, because I think the game should tell people what a role-playing game is by experiencing it, right? And that's what the rules are in this. It's all designed around onboarding people who might not have ever played a game before, a role-playing game, or they might come from a board game background, or they've never played any game before, to be able to pick up this book or this series of books, because it comes as 3. We've got the Dungeoneer's Handbook, which is just what you need to play, which you can sort of hand across to everyone else and leave them to do on stuff while you're working on your own. You've got the Dungeon Keeper's Guide, which is a little more tips and hints about how to run a session and how to create your own things if you want to, and that side of things. And then a Dungeon Manual, which is, flick through it, that's your reference for a room or a hazard and things like that.
Yeah.
And all of it is written from the idea that you've maybe not engaged with this before, but there's occasional, there's little nods in the text of, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, but don't worry if you don't. Here's a way to think about it, or here's a way to engage when you're given what seems like limitless opportunity, or here's a way to engage when you're just wondering how to, talk to other people at the table. It's okay to not be in first person, putting on that silly voice and going for it. It's okay to just describe what they're doing in third person while someone else does that. It doesn't matter, because you're having fun and you're having fun with your friends.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And I mean, obviously, there's a big discussion around Twitter at the moment about metagaming again, and because it happens every month and things like that. It's like, if you're having fun and you're not distracting from that fun, there's no problem with,
Yeah.
with those sorts of things. I think that's really great.
100%.
Cool. I kind of bounce over to Jean for a second, because obviously a big part of how this is all displayed and laid out comes down to your design choices that you and Matt are coming up together. What sort of things are you looking for as a designer in terms of layout and positioning when you're building a book like this, or building books?
So I'm going to take You Meet in a Tavern as an example. It's actually this one is a really fun project to work on because, well, first of all, just from the title, there's this opposition, like dichotomy between You Meet in a Tavern, You Die in a Dungeon, that I try to have in the title, where you have like this really old black letter kind of arched type name, set phrase, kind of what we would see above the door of the tavern as you like walk in, and then you have this big like in your face chunky You Die in a Dungeon kind of like more metal like hurting kind of thing, like something you would see in a video game, like in a Dark Souls, and you're like boom, you died. And so there's this sense of dichotomy that also appears in the influences of the game, because as Matt described it, it's very much a dungeon crawler, but with lots of modern sensibilities and trying to really catch in more as many people as possible, because it plays on assumptions of the genre of like fighting fantasies and that kind of things, but also really helps people that are new to role-playing games, to fantasy as a genre, to dungeon crawling as some sort of like type of adventures. And so I try to have that in the layout by mixing the layout and vibe of these old school books, such as fighting fantasies and game books, but also with more modern elements by mixing types of fonts, the way the space is laid out. So it was really fun because it was really interesting because Matt gave me lots of examples of what he liked, what he wanted. So there was the fighting fantasies. I think there was Advanced D&D 2E. I'm not sure, I might be wrong about that one. But yeah, I mean, and also I'm a big fan of these old kind of clean looks where you have like these two columns, like a big bold header and then a nice sans serif. So yeah, it's really mostly about talking with the designer and figuring out like, what is the game about and what do you want it to be like how do you want people to feel about it? And Matt was really communicative about that. They've explained they explained it's really much a party game, so it's kind of tongue-in-cheek in how it looks, and like it very much wears its influences on its sleeve. Like you can really see, okay, that's what it's modeled after, but there's still like this modern twist to it.
I mean, even the illustrations are just so cool. That kind of woodcut kind of feel to them is just like, it sets such a tone. It's really awesome.
The Hodag, right?
Yeah.
That's actually one thing that's really cool about Hodag's art is that it's very old school. Like you have this thick lines, stark contrast, that really plays into the old retro vibe, and then in turn I can be more modern with the layout, and I try to create an interesting contrast with that. It's also, I think it was in the Dicebreaker article, someone said that the art was not ugly, but it showed like the goofy realness of sometimes adventuring, and that it's not all seriousness and being badass and posing like atop a pile of monsters and you just kill. Sometimes just like tripping in a pit and dying because you're dumb and that's about it.
I think from what I've seen the layout and things like that, it kind of really reminds me of, purposefully, like again, like the Red Box, like Hero Quest, things like that, whereby it's easy to understand where everything is because you have that design language in mind, but it's also kind of perpetuated by these amazing pieces of black and white art where you're just like, this is what adventuring is like. I don't know. I think Wayne and Wayne certainly is, but there was a point in time where there's a lot of freely used art that was kind of reused in Fantasy Flight stuff, in Rune Quest, in Hero Quest, and everywhere, and it kind of has that sort of feel to it for me, and I love that. Kind of...
The interesting thing, one of the things, Sean, that I noticed from the layout pictures in the on the Kickstarter page was just how kind of clean and simple the layout really is, in terms of it feels understandable immediately. Because I know from trying to design a couple of sort of supplements for D&D, there's a reason that people design them to all look the same, and it's basically because there is an established language, so people know which boxes mean what. They know how to get the instructions easily from looking at it. But we've seen a lot of really badly designed games that are just difficult to even look at and read. So did you? I mean, was that something that you've kind of learned from experience of designing previous sort of TTRPG type supplements and things?
So I'm fairly recent. I mean, fairly new as a designer. I probably started advertising myself as a designer in January of this year. I have some experience looking at things because I've read books, I've picked up I've read rules and had to learn stuff, and I guess I've developed a taste for what I want my designs to look like, but also what works and what feels cluttered and usable. I mean, going back to Mutant Year Zero. It's a fairly long book. I think it's about 300 pages or 250 something. And it's dense. There's lots of information. The table of content is not that detailed, so it's kind of hard sometimes to find stuff. I actually had to add lots of post-its to find what I would to add some subsections, because I know I wouldn't be able to find it otherwise during the game. And I mean, OSE definitely established a standard with the panel control type of layout where you have everything you need on one spread. And I don't know if it's a bad thing, but I'm having a really hard time getting away from this, because I just think first of all, it's very convenient, obviously, because if you could just have the book open in front of you and just from a glance just see find what you need. But also, I think I've spent too much time in the OSR space, because I think that anything that doesn't fit on a spread is bloated, in terms of rules or anything. And so if it doesn't fit on a spread, is it really do we really need it?
But I think that's a great check to kind of have as you're designing stuff like that, because players will be overwhelmed by stuff. If you're looking at it and you feel like there's stuff that's unnecessary on there, then that's a great question to kind of edit yourself, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think Matt, maybe you can expand on that, but I think they're definitely going for that simplicity in terms of rules and character creation. I think it also just visually, it's less daunting if, as a GM, you hand the book to a player and you're like, okay, so these are your character options. When you create a character and you see this spread with white space, and it's just not just 2 full columns of text. It's like, oh, okay, I can easily easily look at it and get most of it without spending a full 5 minutes really fully concentrated on it. And that's definitely another way to bring in new players, make it less daunting and less scary to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, looks great.
So
thanks.
Yes, absolutely, Jean. It looks amazing, right? Really good. So Matt, from your perspective, when you were writing rules and that, was that a conscious choice as well, trying to keep everything simple and grounded, so that people were not overwhelmed when they opened the book?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I went to Jean with the design note was let's go as far away from Mork Borg look as possible. Because I think you can just and it's I love the way Mork Borg looks, right? I don't think necessarily all of the pages are as easy to read as possible, but I think it's an incredible feat of design and artwork and everything put together. But what I wanted with this is for someone to go, I loved playing that game, and the moment someone passed me this thing, I knew what I was doing in, like John said, in one page, I knew what I was doing and I was ready to go. And then the rest of it was just, being inspired by the fun you had around the table and the joy of that. I mean, I started writing role-playing games about I think 4 years ago now. And I spent 3 years writing one-page games. So I spent a huge amount of time condensing rules down into a single page so that people could understand what you wanted and what to do in as few words as possible and in a nice, simple way as possible. And outside of role-playing games, I do, educational design, instructional design, that kind of things. And so it's all about this idea of like the way I've written the text and the way I've tried to bring rules into bring an order to the rules is all around this socialization into how do you interact with other people around the table? How do you interact with other people when you're playing a role-playing game? How do you play this game and then go and play it? Yeah. And just trying to flow you through that as simply as possible. And that's what Jean is doing beautifully with the design, is making it clean and easy to read. And so where you are just flicking through those rules, you know where you're looking straight away. You don't have to go, I'm looking for the page with this on it. You spot it and it's there and it makes sense. It follows that procedure. Again, it's that part of that procedure is having it feel sensible when you flip through the book and you're looking for that piece of information and it is there.
It kind of establishes, that language that once you've seen the first few pages, you're like, okay, I get it. I see how I can find the information now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've tried to do things like having the main rules text is body, and then box outs, which are much more around, here's a tip if you're looking to find out how to play, or here's a tip if you're not sure what to do when someone does X, Y, and Z, or here's something which you can add in if you want, but you can ignore it as well. Make it as simple as possible for yourself. And there's some really nice, you can see the little box outs as Jean's done them on the page in those, and I think they look really nice. That contrast that you went for between that sort of the types of text for that and the way it's gone from that sort of slightly more old school text to the new stuff. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, I could geek out.
Big fan of John.
I could geek out and design talk for all day, but
honestly, maybe we should just do a game like a layout thing for you, and Jean can just.
Oh yeah, I'm good with that. We could
by everyone, meanwhile, you're going to have a talk.
Yeah, we'll do a whole episode on that. That's fine. So
I would watch that. I would love to see that.
At what point, Matt, do you break it to the new players that they are just definitely going to die?
It is the first thing that you are told to tell to players in the Dungeon Keeper's Guide. So I've started off by going, before you get going, ask these questions to everyone, answer them yourself, because you are the Dungeon Keeper, but you're part of this game, you're always part of it. First question is, this is a game about Dungeoneers dying. By the end of it, all the Dungeoneers will be dead. Are we okay with this? I think, what's the point in keeping that from people? This is the whole purpose of the game, and I've tried to bake safety into this as much as possible, in not so sort of overtly as going, you can use X cards and lines and veils and things like that, but because I think they're great tools, and I think pointing to those resources separately is a much better way to do it, rather than trying to reinvent them. But baking in this idea constantly throughout the text of, this is a conversation with your mates, you're here to have a nice time, and it's all about making sure that you interact in a way that works for the story you're telling, that works for the fun you're having, setting that tone and establishing it early. All those questions which are valuable to ask before you do, at your session 0 in a campaign, make sure everyone's on the same page before you start playing. And those are very much the starting questions of the game. Are, where do we go with this? What sort of level of violence do we want? How descriptive do we want to be with things?
How painfully do you want to die?
Yeah, exactly. When we did the Wiki Game video, and we're streaming on Friday. Come along. When we did the YouTube video, which we did for the campaign trailer as well. Where was I going with this? I use this idea of going, like, my level of descriptions for people dying is, I think it's really funny when someone bursts, and so that's the sort of level of violence I want to get in there, and it's probably no more than that, and you can establish tone quite easily between people. And
did you play Lemmings as a child?
I didn't. No.
That's a throwback, but things go pop in that a lot, and it is very funny.
I had a lot of Worms Armageddon, which also has a lot of
same humour. That's just really good, and I also think that I love this idea of safety tools being baked in because I think I also, if this is kind of like one of the first sort of role play games that someone comes across, it kind of gets them used to that idea of asking these questions, being aware of having fun, but also having fun within the but being aware of how other people have fun as well, which of course is the whole point of safety tools.
Yeah, I mean, they're games.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
in
the
the
point of the
names.
game.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Okay, so I've got a fun question for you both. What's your favourite part of the game? I mean, it's like asking you to choose your favourite child, I know, but...
Well, do parents not do that?
It's frowned upon, I feel.
Okay.
But,
Well, my answer is going to be short because I haven't read the whole game yet. I've only focused on the parts that I've laid out and gave a quick look at the thing because it's going to be edited and everything. But from what I've seen, I really like the character creations. The options that Matt gives are really fun in the tables because, again, they really like play on these assumptions that you have for each character and really help newcomers, even if they don't use the table, but have an idea of what the character can look like. Okay, so if I want to play a warrior, so this is the kind of stuff that equipment that a warrior would carry. So you can either just like pick one from the table or use it as inspiration for what you want your warrior to have. And I mean, it's not. Yeah, I mean, sorry, Matt. It's nothing groundbreaking, but like writing a good table is still important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when in such a crucial crucial part of the book as character creation, because that is going to define what your game is going. I mean, as a player, what your game is going to look like. So yeah, kudos for your random tables, Matt.
Thank you. Honestly, like it's the hardest part of writing. Getting a good random table. You can have 12 things and they can be crap.
Yeah.
And they don't inspire people and they don't ask questions just by having a single word. And that's the key of a good table, isn't it? It's making sure that people go, I've seen this one word, and actually, I'm going to make this my entire personality for the rest of this session. And it's great. It's what it's all some people need to then have the best session possible. It's just that single word or single phrase just takes them off.
And if you get the right one, that can, like as you say, that can help those people really shape their whole character around it. Like even with our D&D stuff, like we've had people play with us where they've said, I'm finding it difficult to kind of remember to be in character. And, I've said the same things, like just find that one thing, like they're stubborn. If they're stubborn, if you can just fixate on that, then how would a stubborn person answer this question? How would a stubborn person react? You know what I mean? If you could just find the right word, it can really, you just get it. You're like it clicks.
Did a session of Mouse Ritter the other day with some friends, and there's a table you roll on to find out what star you were born on or what sign you were born on, something like that, and it gives you some prompts about your character, and one of them was just unimaginative. My character, and I was like, well, I'm going to make that my entire thing. Everything's like, I can't imagine what that would be like at all. Just constantly throughout the session, and it's just all you need is that one word to run with. So
amazing.
Yeah, thank you, John. I don't know what my favorite thing about it is. I love it all. I think it is doing something which I think is different within a space that is saturated with things which are overlapping, right? And I think it's just nestling itself nicely into a very saturated market by going, here is a interesting way to approach a very traditional thing, and it is a very calm and fun way to get used to role playing, and also to not feel like it's so much of a problem when in that OSR space when your character dies. It's about taking that idea of I love it when characters die. I think it's great. I bake it into games as often as I can, and so it's one of the biggest influences on my writing is Grant Howitt, who part of the reason I started writing role-playing games was because I read Honey Heist and then played some Spire, and I loved it. And I love that idea of character death means something. So taking away from that. Oh, you didn't roll very well, so your last hit point is gone and you die. And going, you didn't roll very well, but that doesn't matter because you all had a fun time. And now you make it the point when you die. Now you make it about you, and you take the stage and you make it really interesting.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're sat there going, oh, what do I do now while my friends have fun? It means that you can just roll on up, join them back in as someone else, just keep going. I really just I like the concept. That's what I like.
I mean, it does sound so much fun, and this idea that that even though death is inevitable, it kind of does feel like it means something in this game as well. Like you can have fun with it. I kind of see that whole sort of like Looney Tunes style sort of violence and things to it, but with more consequences. You know, and I think that's really, really cool. I think it's really, really so. Yeah. We'll move on to. I think we'll move on to a little bit about game design as well, if you don't mind, because obviously, going to get as much information out of you whilst you're here as we can. You, Matt, you already touched on the fact that you sort of started about 4 years ago designing one-page TTRPGs. What kind of inspired you to kind of get into that and start doing that yourself? Although I think you gave us a hint a little earlier.
I mean, I had some friends who've been designing board games. They put out a game called Who Should We Eat, which is a lot of fun. If you ever want to be on a desert island and resort to cannibalism way too quickly.
Oh my god, that sounds like my kind of game.
Honestly, it's put out by WizKids. It's a great game. Don't buy it. It gets them like 2p every Christmas if you do. So go for it. And we were so there was a lot of playtesting going on at games and writing stuff and sort of putting things together. I started doing some board game stuff because I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I started making some weird prototypes. I made a game called Craypape where you're a gorilla who's escaped from the zoo and you've found your way into the creperie next door and you're trying to and the whole game is you wear these gorilla gloves. I've got the prototype up there still somewhere. You wear these gorilla gloves and you try and make an accurate order for someone based off a load of tokens they've given them. One day it will come into being, but at the moment it's still a prototype.
That's such a great
And then my friend Mike went, have you seen this? And handed me across his phone, and on it was the one page of Honey Heists. And I read it and I went, that's really clever. You could put that all in one page. I wonder if I could do that. And then I did that solidly once a month for 3 years. Creating one page game after one page game until I went, I have got to the point where I have all these ideas which are bigger than one page and I want to start making them. So that's sort of the point I'm at now. At the start of this year, I stopped doing that, stopped doing this one pages and started writing. Not actually started writing this game. I started writing this game in about July. I think I went, oh, this is a good idea. I'll just start that. I've been working on a sort of Blades in the Dark adjacent sort of it's called a revolutionary London crawl. It's called Automata Britannica, and it's all about being
nice name.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I've been working on the name I've had the name for ages. I've had that for as well. Weirdly, I started off, the first thing I tried to write as a game designer, as an RPG designer, was a zombie RPG. Incredibly crunchy, very, very over the top. I mean, I had a calculation based on the weight of your character for how long they could carry a pack for. It was that level of crunch.
Oh my god.
I was writing that and I went, I hate this. and that's when the one page stuff started, and then condensing into rules, and now I'm getting to that point where I want to just start creating things which are bigger and more beautiful and more interesting and get people involved, and that's what I'm doing at this point.
That's brilliant. I think that's really cool. I was kind of alluding to the fact that when you first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, you had the board game, you were trying to find ways to mechanically make it your own, so it feels like it's been a long-term interest.
Yeah, I think even if I didn't recognize that, it was definitely or sitting around in a pub and going, oh, what happens if you take this ball and throw it into that cup? Is it good? Like, that sort of thing. I think, there's everything can be play and everything can be game design. And I think that's one of the things people need to recognize if they're worried about wanting to start game designing or anything like that. Is you've probably designed a game already with your mates. Mm-hmm. You've probably done it, sat around a table or sat in a park or something, or you've played a game where you're sat in a park, which someone probably designed doing exactly the same way. And so you could take that and change it and make it your own. And that's the heart of it, is just find the thing that you want to find, the thing that you like, and work out how to get other people to do it with you.
There you go, everybody. That's how you start.
It's interesting though, because that does make it feel so much less daunting, the idea of like designing a game, because to my mind it just sounds terrifying. Just the idea of working out systems and rules and how things work sounds really terrifying to me. But when you put it like that, it's kind of like, I guess that's true. Like, we do play all the time and make little games up and stuff, so it does make it feel a little less daunting. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. Don't
It's easy.
It's not easy. I don't believe you for a second. That's what Chris said when we started playing D&D, and I still can't do the maths.
and yet you DM now, so
Which, God knows.
That's amazing. Wayne, you had some really good questions for Jean around design.
Well, I think we kind of covered it though, because like I said, it's one of the things that I found really interesting trying to design something for a D&D supplement, was this trying to do it my own way. I very quickly realized that the reason people do it the same way for everything is because there is an established design language. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought it was really fascinating, what you were talking about earlier, that sort of designing a new system or a new visual language for people to be able to absorb that information easily and quickly. I thought it was a really fascinating kind of process. And that's why I love the simplicity of what you did, because it feels so easy to absorb, which I know a lot of them don't. But I think we kind of touched on that.
I was thinking more in the lines of, because obviously, Jean, your background is more literary based, and then you've moved into TTRPGs. Has that been a natural progression, or is it just one of those things where it's like, no, I'm just going to start doing this now?
It was very much the latter. So I have a master's in English literature with like specialization on research. So I was destining myself to do a PhD, which thank God I didn't in the end, because my partner is doing one and it's so terrible. I mean, it's very enriching and very interesting, but oh my God, the stress and pressure and expectations. Thank God it's only one of us doing it. So I have this training, I guess, which, I mean, I guess, helped me perfect my English, so it wasn't all lost. And I think it definitely gave me maybe a more analytical mind, like really trying to, being able to dissect and understand how things work. So whether from a textual point of view, which is fairly important, I guess, in role-playing games, because we do read a lot of words. And also, understand. I think most interesting, like how I use it most is because I've always been interested in literary analysis and what makes an interesting story and how to tell an interesting story. Is I always try to, I'm not trying to succeed, but implement it in my design, or like game design, or when I play, because I kind of have ideas of what make interesting story beats or what make cool character moments. And I always try to take that from my studies and be like, okay, so I'm going to do a Shakespeare and have this long monologue about this character that I killed 3 years ago and how it still affects me. It's mostly this knowledge of like storytelling. I mean, it's not absolute, of course. Still have a lot of books to read, but it's very much it happened kind of the chance. I didn't want to go into teaching. I didn't manage to find a PhD, and I was like, oh yeah, role-playing games are fun. I like making like fun images in Photoshop, so we're gonna try and bash together a few things. And learned in design and slowly built up a portfolio. Did a lot of Mork Borg. I think this like still the main thing that I do, because my work is it's very permissive in how it looks. You can be, I think, as over the top or as simplistic in a way as you want, because I mean, if you look at the book, you have like some very big splash of colors and like 10 fonts on the page, or like some more simple things.
I love the design of Mork Borg. It's one of those ones where it's just like it is over the top, but you're like, someone's actually given this some thought. It just isn't just throwing things at you for no reason. So
it's very deliberate in its anarchy somehow. But it also it's very much, I mentioned OSE earlier, but I think Mork Borg has also become some sort of reference point, especially for me. It's a very good reference point in my meetings. I'm like, okay, so how far from Mork Borg do you want to be? After 1 to 10. Someone was like 0. It's okay, Mork Borg is 10. I want minus a million.
I was going to say, now you have the two ends of the spectrum that you can show them.
So yeah, I mean, I think literature is still there for me. It's helped me, like, I think, understand how a story works, and how to I try to apply that to my writing, like when I do write stuff. But it doesn't.
I think that helps from the design side as well. I think understanding how important it is to get those kind of story beats communicated does make a difference, because it is all about the stories for these games. I mean, that's literally what they're about.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. Big question. Don't worry, it's all good. One of the things that we care a lot about at Some Other Heroes is representation and creating space for all sorts of people, mostly very much marginalized people, particularly the queer community, of which all the cast members are members of. So I know that this is something that you sort of are quite keen on as well. How do you bake that into something like this? How do you try and make sure that there is that space, that language is in there when you're creating something like you meet in a tavern, you die in a dungeon?
Yeah, like you say, it's massively important. I think there are 2 ways to do it, and we're doing both of them with this.
Yeah.
One of them is to be overt. And that is, there is if we're talking about gender identity and inclusion, there is part of your character creation is name and pronouns. There is a box out which is, if you're wondering why we've got pronouns in here, here's a reason. And it's just as important to think about this as it is to think about any other part of your character. And it sort of talks about that more.
Amazing.
On each of the Dungeoneer types, there's a little bit of character text, like it's a short story paragraph thing of someone dying. And each of those uses different pronouns going, from she, her, they to it, Ziza, that sort of thing. So a whole spread of things just to go, here's some ideas for you, which are not just limited to that.
Yeah.
In terms of things like more like racial diversity and things like that, one of the briefs I gave to Hodag with the art was, I want there to be this big mixture of heritages and physical representation of disability as well. So there's an awesome picture he did with a combat wheelchair user who's up against a legally distinct eyeball behemoth, which is just, it just looks badass.
I did notice even in the illustration in the kind of tavern on the Kickstarter page, there is a wheelchair in the corner next to where everyone else is just kind of standing and socializing, and it's just kind of very natural. Yeah,
and then there's so that's, I feel, it's sort of treading the line between overt, and that's the other side of it. So that's where it's just baked in. It's just, you're turning the page and you see yourself on the page. You see someone who looks like you, or see someone who looks, or you read something which you identify with as you. And so, that's what I've tried to get into the art style in it. There's also accessibility, which comes into a big side of it. And so accessibility in terms of, there's a huge amount of stuff that I could go into about accessibility, but one of the big things in terms of just creating the text is having it be simple to read, nice signposting so you know exactly where you're going with the next piece of information, not
Yeah.
being very aware of that cognitive load on people who are reading and being able to go, actually, here's a piece where you can jump to. And then the other side of things that I like to do with accessibility is like to provide lots of alternative formats. So with the digital versions of this, Jean and I have already spoken a bit about how we're going to make sure that the main PDF is as accessible as possible, but also providing text-only versions like EPUB, things which are just device agnostic as well as assistive technology sort of friendlier than the simple PDF format. So trying to cover all of those bases and make it feel like not only when you're reading the book, not when you're looking at the book, but also when you're using the book, that you feel like you have been considered.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
So important, and I love that you have taken that level of thought and concern about it. I mean, just simply for a lot of people, just seeing themselves in these pages just makes such a huge difference, and also making it feel very normal and natural as well.
I think it's definitely the main way to do it is to make it feel natural. I mean, you kind of have to, I mean, still as creators we have to make an effort to make it happen, because it's still not a norm and it's still something that I think a lot of us are learning. But yeah, I think the right way to do it is to make it feel normal. Like, it's not forced on like putting the emphasis specifically on these inclusive characters. It's just, it's there. Like, just like in real life, these characters exist. And I think Matt and has done that very well in the text, and Hodag is doing a great job at showing it in the illustrations.
Beautiful.
I think there's room for actually like making it sort of just a natural part of it, but also just making sure that you are still highlighting it, just going, by the way, we're doing this, because sending that message that sending a message by baking something in and making it just a natural part of it is sending a message. But sometimes when there is a conversation which is specifically harmful to people but it's still going on, it's important to make sure that message is louder as well.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that's tried to be put into this text as much as possible as well.
I mean, when we started with some of the heroes, we knew that the majority of the cast would probably be queer people, because those are the people that we know and we love and that we're around them, and we knew the friends we wanted to invite. But we also very intentionally, the same thing, kind of said we want to, and we know it could be a risk for us on Twitch, but we want to be explicitly and overtly promoting the queer community. Like, that's what we want to do, because so many of us never saw any kind of representation in these games or other things growing up. So actually, we want to make sure that we are doing that. And I think, I just think it's amazing that you started with that from the design. It's not an afterthought. It's something that's part of the creation of it, which I think makes such a big difference.
Yeah, that intentional design is such a wonderful thing to be able to do, and we certainly appreciate it, and I'm very much certain that other people will as well. Sadly, as much as I want to keep you for the rest of the night and talk about this, we are running out of time.
It's Wicked Wednesday. You've got to
Yes.
They literally know where we live, so
they're watching right now.
On fear of death, we would delay Wicked Wednesday.
So we are going to jump over in a second, but before we do, I'd like a last chance for you guys to just tell us where we can find you, and if you have anything else coming up other than completely focused on your Kickstarter at the moment. Start with Jean, if that's okay.
So you can mostly find me on Twitter. There's a link on my portfolio there. I have different things in the works, like personal projects, but it's a bit of a mess right now because I've got, thank God, lots of graphic design work. So thanks to all my clients. Thank you very much. But yeah, I'm working on You Meet in Dungeon, You Meet in a Tavern, You Die in a Dungeon. Can't do that. Terrible publicity. If you want, I do graphic design, art direction, consultation as well. So if you want help or like my ideas or something, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or by email. I love talking about layout and design.
Hi, Jean. He's a pleasure to work with, honestly. Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah,
Matt,
and
would
you can
like to go
find
next?
you can find me at Ursidice on Twitter, which is where I spend most of my time just yammering into the void. At the moment, it's mostly Kickstarter related, but yeah, it does often become sort of just a lot weirder as well. I've got stuff on Itch and Drive-Thru where you can buy things. It is mostly Meet In A Tavern, You Die at a Dungeon at the moment, but I've also got Court of the Lich Queen, which I'm working on, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game where you play as individual undead realms trying to avert an apocalypse. Which Nikki helped playtest and is actually yeah, it's coming together. You can get an alpha of that on Itch for free, so go and grab that. And outside of that, all the other stuff that I mentioned, trying to write but haven't got around to it yet.
And we look forward to seeing that all. Also, please, if you haven't done so already, do pop past the Kickstarter, have a look. Even if you just kind of can, like, buy the bottom tier, it will help these wonderful people out a lot. It is an amazing looking game. We can't wait to get hold of our copy of it and torture ourselves in the most wonderful way possible.
I'm so looking forward to dying. So
Yay!
there's a sentence I never expected to say.
Yeah, and please come join us on Friday with Wicked Game. We're streaming 7 p.m. GMT +1 BST, whatever that is. Yeah, where we'll be playing through, and it'll be a whole bunch of fun.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to that myself. Awesome. I guess that all that's left is for Wayne and I to say goodbye for now. You can find us in our normal places. We won't all be back this Sunday. It is just me this Sunday. We are doing a very special episode where we are making NPCs to torture the cast for the remainder of their adventure. So come and join me there, 3 p.m. BST GMT +1. I look forward to seeing you there. This has been amazing.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
So
Thank you,
much.
Matt.
Both of
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yeah, really
This
appreciate
has
it.
been wonderful. Thank you so much. We've been Some of the Heroes. This has been Space at the Table. You're all lovely. Take care of yourselves, please, and we shall see you soon.
Goes.